Hello, 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 and welcome to Thorough Thoughts with EpitaphFox. Today we will be discussing The Elder Scrolls III Morrowind with Akuma. Akuma, thank you so much for joining us today. Before we begin, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello. I go by AkumaMasurao on YouTube and Discord. I know that a lot of people call it Akuma because of Street Fighter, but I think that Akuma is the Japanese pronunciation of the word, which is where I got it from. But it happens all the time, so I'm not offended or anything. I've been doing YouTube stuff for about 12 or 13 years at this point, and I did a 2 year playthrough of Morrowind a long time ago and did almost everything that there was to do in the game, except for a couple things I didn't feel comfortable with, and some other stuff that had to be cut out because of other quests that I did. But we can talk about that later. Um, I share a Discord server with Epitaph on with the Astral Alchemist, and it's pretty much how I got to where I am now.
All right, well, to be honest, I did not know that was your pronunciation of your name. I do apologize about that. I know you said it was no big deal. I look at that and I see Kuma and I think Monokuma and Kuma as in bear. So Akuma, correct?
Yeah, I believe it's the Japanese word for demon, which I won't get into the entirety of it, but it's basically the username I made back when I was college, and it just kind of followed me around everywhere. Uh, but I think that most people get the pronunciation of Akuma from the Street Fighter game back
Yeah.
on the NES, but also that was the Americanized pronunciation of Japanese words back then, and that's how we got the translation of "all your base or belong to us." So
Well, let's get right into it then. Without any spoilers, if possible, please briefly explain the plot of the main quest of Morrowind. Who is the player character? What is their goal or task to complete by the end of their quest?
So, like all of the good Elder Scrolls games, this one starts with the protagonist being a prisoner of the Empire.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you are taken from prison in from wherever you're previously held. I assume it was Cyrodiil, and then shipped off to the island of Vardenfell in the continent of Morrowind. They want you to basically act as the to to pose or to try to fulfill prophecies of a religious order that you are somewhat eligible for just because you happen to have been born on a certain day. Uh, you are essentially inducted into this undercover operation for the government who says, here's what we need you to do. We need you to look into these different prophecies and see if we can at least make the people believe that you can fulfill these prophecies and help us to kind of get a better foothold in Morrowind as a whole, rather than just us having a presence here. Uh, and it's slightly not plot related, but essentially at this time in the Elder Scrolls, the Empire is occupying Vardenfell and Morrowind, and the Dunmer, the Dark Elves, are trying to hang on to their own culture, their own ways of doing things, and they're not entirely uh, willing to let the Empire just come in and take over and have everything change. Which, in some ways, I feel like that's kind of a good thing because you don't want your people to be completely whitewashed by the opposing force coming in. On the other hand, some of the stuff that they do, such as slavery and assassinations and all that kind of stuff, you look at that and you go, oh, yeah, no, let's get rid of those things. But to the Dunmer, essentially, their culture is their culture, and they want to hang on to as much of their culture as they can. And if a culture wants to change itself, that's one thing.
Mm-hmm.
But if another force is coming in and saying, we want you to change all these things immediately, there's obviously going to be some backlash to that. But that's basically what the idea is. You're coming in to try to smooth things over by fulfilling a prophecy, or at least pretending to.
So the Empire in this case is taking advantage of this prophetic culture to try and gain additional foothold in this province. Um, Now that's an element of the plot that, like, as an Elder Scrolls enjoyer, I am aware of some of what goes on in the Morrowind game, but that's an element I was not aware of.
Yeah, that's basically how they open things up. When you first start the game, you're given pretty much no information about your character or what the plot is. You're brought from a prison ship to a checkpoint, and after going through the checkpoint, getting your papers all done, which is also known as character creation, you go to the head of the person who's running that particular town, and he says, "All right, so now that you're here, here's what we want you to do. We need you to take these packages and this note to this person in this city, and he'll fill you in on everything else." Okay, sure. You're out of prison. You're going to do whatever they want because you're out of prison. You get to that person, he says, "So here's what you're really here for," and then he gives you all this information, and you're free from prison, and these are the people you owe your lives to, and they're not being rude to you in the moment. So you're like, "Sure, whatever. Let's try this out."
And in typical RPG fashion, it's here's the story, you can follow the tracks. But I also what I really love about Elder Scrolls is once you get past the start of the ride, so to speak, once you crest that first hill, they let you kind of just do whatever you want. You can follow the track and follow the main quest if you'd like, and that's probably the intended path, but you can just go on from there, do whatever you want.
Yeah, and they actually do give you a couple of points during the story to say now would be a good time to go do this.
Oh,
When
really?
you first meet your final intended contact, he'll say, essentially, you're new to this place and you look like you're new. So here's some gold. Go get yourself sorted out. Maybe go get yourself a cover story. Join some guilds. Do some work for some people. Maybe go to a couple towns, get yourself established, and understand the kind of world that you're living in.
Mm-hmm.
Then, when you're ready and you feel comfortable, come back to me, and we'll get you started on your intended work that you're supposed to be here for.
I guess that's the benefit of the older Elder Scrolls games, and I guess you could say that this applies to older Bethesda games across the board. But there's more emphasis on the role playing because as you go through the games, going to Oblivion and then to Skyrim, it becomes less about the role playing and more about like the action elements of it.
Yeah.
So, being lightly familiar with Morrowind, as I mentioned, being a fan of the Elder Scrolls, I started with Oblivion in particular. My friend played Morrowind, and then Oblivion came out, and that's how we got established with the series. But what about you? Did you start with Morrowind, or was it one of the other games in this incredible series?
I didn't even know that it was a series, but Morrowind was my first game in it. I was having my 12th or 13th birthday party at the time, and as was back then, all your friends come over, they bring their game systems, a few TVs, you do some LAN parties gaming together. And one of my friends brought his Xbox and a copy of Morrowind. I don't know why he brought this single player game to this big party, but he was telling me about it later during the night, and I thought it sounded interesting. So after the majority of people had gone to sleep, I decided that I wanted to try it out, and I asked him to kind of like give me some guidance on what would be the best selections to make, what kind of skills should I optimize. And he said, there is no real best one to make. You just kind of figure out which ones sound the coolest and go from there, which I didn't entirely comprehend. And then the world opened up to me, and asked again, "So where do I go from here?" And he said, "Wherever you want." And I was confused because up to that point, all the games that I had played were essentially Pokemon, Ocarina of Time, all these other different games that have an intended set story path and progression, and to suddenly be put into a game that I didn't realize was open world was jarring and freeing, and I wasn't quite sure how to interpret everything. Uh, so I tried a few things. He helped me basically figure out the controls in my inventory menu and all this stuff like that. But after that, I was essentially set free to try to figure out what this game was and how to play it. And Yeah, that was essentially my first experience with Morrowind. Was, what is this thing? This is brand new. I've never even considered something like this before. And overall, yeah, Morrowind was my first experience with the series and my first experience with these kind of games as well. So it was a very big deal for me.
It's funny that you mention the birthday party element of it, and why would a friend bring a single player game over for a group of people to experience? Because my start with Oblivion is very similar to that. Again, my friend had talked to me about Morrowind, but I hadn't like been with him and watched him play it or anything. And then when Oblivion came out, we would have like sleepovers at his house, and basically it would be us or just me hanging out watching him play the game. And like we had the guidebook, so I would like read through stuff in the guidebook to help him as he played. But there is something that is so enjoyable about watching someone play a single player game when it is a game like Oblivion or even Morrowind, because of that open world nature. You're not watching someone go through the same thing every single time, and it can just be a, hey, want to see this? I'm going to go over here because I can just go over to this location.
Yeah, yeah.
Now,
That's yeah. I love just the openness that everybody can have a completely different experience while playing the same game, and in some cases even going the same direction. It's something special that was otherwise non-existent back in those days.
especially considering, again, I'll mention the idea of the former games compared to the modern games, where there was that higher emphasis on the role playing. For example, you could watch someone play Skyrim, and yes, there are random encounters and random events that can occur, so you're technically not getting the same experience. But I would say watching someone play Skyrim versus watching someone playing Morrowind would have even more of a going down the same path. It's a completely different experience compared to the modern games because they've moved closer to an action RPG genre.
Yeah, absolutely. Even I would say, like, one thing to throw kind of into that little uh, pool there is that uh, with Oblivion and Skyrim, they just as an example of what happened to the series over time. In Oblivion, all of your weapon skills have been changed to either blunt or blade, and in Skyrim, it changed from one-handed and two-handed.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the weapons that they had in Morrowind were suddenly useless. Like there's no more spears, there's no more throwing darts, there's none of all this other stuff that you could have, and there were uh, there were essentially different weapon types, like not just blade, but you would have short blade or long blade. You would have the a mace, a club. There were all these different types of weapon assortments that were available in Morrowind, and you could get good at using one very specific type of weapon, but that didn't automatically make you good at all the others. Whereas in the later games, you can swing a heavy greatsword around forever, and suddenly you're just as good wielding a warhammer, which practically, when those are not the same, but you just kind of go along with it for the sake of the game being the game.
Mm-hmm.
Though in Morrowind, it's just saying, no, these are two completely different weapons. Just because you use one, it doesn't mean you know how to use the other. So get better at this other thing that is completely new to you and your character that your character does not know how to use. So you could go down those same paths, but you would have entirely different skills. Like, even though that's normal in Elder Scrolls games overall, even then you would have different skills that you would be using in different ways. If you choose magic skills, then you might have an extra magic skill. And the magic system is completely bonkers in that game. So maybe this is a bad example, but yeah, you might have a better time beating a Quama Forager to death with your hands than you would by taking out a short sword and trying to stab it, because you're just more skilled using your hands instead of a weapon.
Now, see that this is another thing about Morrowind that I didn't really know. So I'm loving all of this information. I'm so thankful that you wanted to talk about it, because I love learning just in general, but very specifically about this series that I love so much. One thing I've heard about Morrowind is that the water is incredibly dangerous. I recall much early on in Oblivion's release, like trying to look up information online and seeing someone talking about gearing up to traverse the moat around the Imperial City and being dumbfounded at how you could just swim across. Is the water in Morrowind really that dangerous?
I don't know if I would call it dangerous specifically unless you're a very fresh beginning character with no weapons, armor, or idea of what you're doing. But in Morrowind, the slaughterfish are much more deadly, and they can see you from much farther away. And if it's not the slaughterfish, the Droog are also much more dangerous, and they can also see very far ahead in the water. So the water is riskier to have a peaceful time with because the fish will just come out of nowhere.
So there's just more enemies, and the enemies themselves are more dangerous.
Yeah, the fact that they can see you from so far away before you even recognize where they're coming from because you're swimming in a three-dimensional space. You're not like looking around on the ground to see what enemy is running toward you. Maybe that fish is right below you and you have no idea, and or maybe it was behind you and it didn't recognize you until you got this far into the water. Or suddenly there's this big shadow coming at you and oh, that's a Droog. Oh, it killed me in one hit. I am not prepared for any of this. So the water is fairly dangerous. Though in the same regard, the mountains are dangerous too. Anybody who has played Morrowind for more than 15 minutes will tell you cliff racers are the bane of our existence in Morrowind. Much like the slaughterfish can see you from far away, if you go up into the mountains, these flying creatures look similar to pterodactyls, called cliff racers, will just charge at you, screaming their annoying calls the entire time, trying to hit you, and you're trying to figure out where's the hitbox. Am I punching at the hitbox, or am I missing in the hitbox because my character's just missing the creature? So you're trying to survive. Meanwhile, all the wildlife is saying, "Ooh, fresh meat! What you have?" And it becomes a trial by fire if you go into the wrong place at the wrong time, whether it's the water, the mountains, or you shouldn't have eaten that mushroom.
Now, you mentioned before that magic in Morrowind is like a whole other beast. When you first played Morrowind, or maybe just like as you play it, or different times that you've played it, what do you usually find yourself playing as, like with a style? Are you more of like a melee character, a mage, or maybe a thief?
I've wanted to play a mage a number of times. I'll usually go with a melee character who attempts to level up the sneak skill because it's so hard to do in the beginning. At least it's easier in the beginning than it is later down the road. But I generally prefer the melee classes because there's less. At least it feels like there is less randomness when you're trying to hit an enemy with a sword. For mages, you're relying on a number of things for your magic to work correctly, and also your magic does not automatically replenish in that game. So you have to keep your magic topped off while trying to attempt to get through a dungeon or just from town to town. And you might just be running down the road with 5 creatures behind you that might even be faster than you, and you can't do anything because you're out of magic and you don't know how to use a frickin' dagger.
So magic is almost like a support level type of character build, something that you have in addition to other ways to defend yourself.
Yeah, kind of. I see it that way in. I kind of see it as that function in the majority of Elder Scrolls games. But if you do level up your magic skills and you get good at it and you have the magic pool and the skills to cast magic, there are some brokenly devastating spells that you can use in Morrowind to just clear out entire regions of whatever you want. So magic is both weak and supportive and probably not everybody's forte, and also the most ridiculously overpowered thing in the game. The third most ridiculously overpowered thing in the game. So it's very random, but it's usable. Just you better know what you're getting into before you try to get into it.
I guess that falls in line with a lot of role playing games, both tabletop and also video game, um, in terms of early genre types of media, where magic isn't strong at the beginning and then you get to glass cannon levels.
Mm, yeah, I'd say so. Yeah,
But I
it
suppose you
doesn't.
could say that about like the melee classes as well. Like you're not going to be as skillful or as dangerous with your weapons until you've gotten more skillful at them and you've raised the skill level. You're able to deal more damage. You probably have access to combos or special skills.
Some degree, yes. Um, at least in the later games, you are able to level up your skills and abilities to a point where um, you do feel like you're very overpowered and there's nothing that can come at you until you come across the right or wrong enemy, depending on your point of view at the time. But essentially, in the later games, your melee build is the same in the end as it was before. You just have a few extra perks that go along with it, which is you run up to Thien and hit with stick until it dies. With magic, um, it can be very it's very much more erratic. At least in Morrowind, there's a chance that when you cast the spell, you spend your magic points, your spell might not go off because you
What?
cast maybe your character casts the spell wrong. They're not as knowledgeable in this particular school of magic to know how to cast the spell correctly. So they'll spend the magic points, prepare to cast a spell, and it fizzles out. Which in some ways it feels like it is a quality of life improvement that later games do improve on because you can actually practice with magic. You can get good at it. You're saying, I want to do a magic build, and you stick to that and you can make it work. Though in Morrowind, your character is a prisoner that came from nowhere who maybe he has a tiny bit of skill, but maybe you know a spell like a light spell or a quick
Mm-hmm.
little fire cantrip or whatever you want to call it, but that doesn't mean that you're automatically good at it. You just know the process to cast this spell. In other different media like books or other games that take a much more finesse approach, maybe you need to move your hands or your fingers in a certain way. You need to say the spell with the correct enunciation and projection and move your arms correctly. You need to do all these things just right in order for the spell to work. And in across many media, that's what makes magic so, for lack of a better word, magical. Is you are using this very specific skill that maybe anybody could learn, but it's so specific, it's so precise, it demands such finesse that not everybody can do it. You need to practice with it to the point where it becomes second nature, where you are that good at it. And then maybe you want to learn some more skills, maybe some more advanced magic skills down the road. And because you've practiced so much with these minor things, you're able to catch on to these larger ones quickly, and there's less risk of it not working correctly or not working at all. But for sure, in Morrowind, magic is something that you have to practice with. And in the beginning, um, probably much more than any of the other games, if you want to get good at magic, you want to find somebody who can train you in the skill.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you have to pay gold for it, and the price that you pay is dependent on your skill, and they can only train you up to their level in the skill. But it's a in the case of Morrowind, magic is a fascinating and kind of wondrous skill that you want to be able to learn because it is so different from your other skills. Marksmanship, sneaking around, hitting stuff with stick. Magic is just that much, that it's so much more divided from those more mundane skills that playing in a fantasy game, you take that wonderment into your memory and think, I want to explore this facet of the world and the game more. And I and the best way to do that is to get someone to train you in it. Don't just be self-taught. So it is frustrating in the beginning when you have these maybe a few magic spells, or you purchase some spells from somewhere and you're like, all right, let's get started, and you can't do jack. Well, yeah, that's frustrating, but you also have no idea what you're doing.
So do you feel like Morrowind emulates a realism in learning magic where you as a player need to really put in the work, much like a character in the game learning how to not only like cast the magic but also accurately and consecutively cast magic. There's a realism to it of you as the player are putting in the time and effort to be able to have your character do this.
Yes, absolutely. I think that in addition to Morrowind being my first game of this sort, it was also the first game where I felt like I was role playing a particular character, trying to learn these different skills, trying to learn about this region and these people, trying to figure out what I don't know so that I can learn what I don't know and get better at what is now a passing interest. There's the the skills and mechanics and leveling system and everything that goes into one swing of your sword in combat is so detailed, so it's so complex in a way that you don't recognize how complex it is. You're just wondering, why am I not as good at this as I want to be?
Mm-hmm.
And you find out that there are ways to get better at the thing you want to be in game, and you can get better at those things in game. But if you decide, I want to know the extent of how complicated this is, and you go online and you look stuff up and you go, what were the developers smoking when they put together this system? This is ridiculous coding. But as you start to like look at uh, how they coded the game and everything that went into, again, one swing from your sword, you realize this is not a modern game where people are trying to get this out as fast as possible for the casual consumption of the masses so that we can get some extra income while we work on the next thing. This is not just a new game in this new series. This was a passion project. And it comes across in how you play your character and how things move about. It's very much a role-playing game that slowly adapts you to what the intention of role-playing games were probably intended to be.
No, I understand what you're saying by that. Shifting our focus just briefly towards the future, Oblivion just recently receiving a remaster. Do you think there might be a Morrowind remaster on the horizon?
Well, for the quick and short answer, I'd say no. For a little bit more of an answer, there is a project I'm aware of that's been in production for a very, very, very long time called Skywind, where
Mm-hmm.
people are using the Skyrim engine to recreate Morrowind and the the whole of Morrowind, not just the island of Vardenfell. So all of it in the Skyrim engine to recreate, to revisit and replay and re-experience all of that. And whether it's I'm I should preface this. Skywind is another passion project that is very personally and intentionally driven to make the best thing possible by fans of both Skyrim and Morrowind who want the modern world to experience Morrowind in the way that they did. and that is amazing, and I love it, and I wish them the absolute best. But whether it's Skyrim or whether it's Skywind or an official re-release of Morrowind, it would not be the same as the original was, for both better and worse. There
There
are
would
a
have
lot
to
of
be
quality.
too many sacrifices to make the game more modernly enjoyable. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
In a way, yes. And if you're not super aware of the intricacies of Morrowind as a game, then you'd probably recognize very, very little that actually changed. Um, but if you compare Morrowind to the other games, kind of like what I was saying about all the work that goes into um, all the work that goes into a general swing of the sword, there's like lines and lines and lines of code that the character stats are going to use to say, will this attack be good enough to hit? And then there are lines and lines and lines of code to say the enemy that you're trying to attack, does it hit him or does it miss? And then how much damage will it do? And then there's all the buffs and debuffs and all that that go into both sides that adjust things so much more. And yeah, there are those elements in the later games where you can have extra magic effects, like just a potion of resist magic or upgrade a potion to increase your one-handed skill or whatever. But just looking at how I kind of feel like I'm cheating people out of an answer by saying go look at how this was coded, because it's kind of a cop out answer to say go look it up yourself. I'm not going to go into it. But the problem is it's so I don't want to say complex. I want to say no. I don't want to say complicated. I want to say complex, and not complex in the bad way. Where why is this so ridiculous the way it is? You could have simplified things so much more. But it's more like Morrowind feels like it was an indie game that was made at the point when an indie developer studio was beginning to become a AAA developer. It's a game series where it just feels like somebody said, "This sounds like a good idea for a game. Let's sit down and start making this game, and we might need to make stuff up as we go, but let's put some stuff through the system and see how it looks, see how it feels. And if it's good enough, let's see if we can expand on this a bit more." Whereas a lot of other games kind of feel like you get a bunch of people sitting down in a boardroom, for lack of a better term, and saying, all right, here's the story that we have laid out. Is there anything wrong with the story? How can we improve the story? What can we work on here and here and here and here? Then they've got the structure and they say, all right, let's make a game around this. Morrowind does the opposite. It says, hey, here's the game system. Want to make something out of this? Okay, sure. So to take Morrowind and what Morrowind is and try to take a game that was a game before it had any structure or anything else built around it and try to do an HD remaster or a re-release or what have you in a completely new engine or an upgraded engine or for new hardware and all that stuff, it feels more like you're taking that skeletal structure and then putting the game inside it. And it would very much have not the same feel. You would have narratively and for locations and story experiences, all that kind of stuff, you would have the same game. You could have the same experience. But if you step back and compare the two directly without being biased toward one or the other, well, maybe a little bit of bias. If you try to look at them entirely separately and see what one has, what the other does have, what they don't have between them, it would be a very different game. It would not have the same feel. It's like going to a restaurant that you enjoyed when you were a kid and you have that very specific something on the menu that you loved so much, and you go back 30 years later and the restaurant is still there, they have the same thing on the menu, you order the same thing, and it tastes different because in all that time the recipe changed in ways that maybe no one even remembers.
You take
And you
that
came here
first
for the,
bite, and you can just tell that a rat made
yeah, this is
it.
not the same, it's not the same product, it's not the same experience. You came here looking for something that you had an itch for, you just had this particular craving, and you get there and you have it, and it's just not what you remember, it's not what you expected. And even if you think that maybe time kind of changed the way I remember this, even then it's, I remember something particular that I wanted, and this just is not it anymore.
So correct
So
me if I'm wrong then, but I'm
yeah.
getting the impression that should a remaster come out, whether it's Skywind or it's a official thing from Bethesda, you would play it, but you know instinctually it would not be the same and you would not enjoy it as much as the original game.
I'd say that's about 80% correct. I would probably play it and attempt to experience it as something that is entirely new, that is based on something that I originally used to love, already knowing that it will be a different experience. I wouldn't judge it for being different and just well, I guess just being different. I wouldn't try to judge it by saying the original was better because of these reasons. I try to come at it with the perspective of here's something new that is the same coat of paint, but we're not going to say, we're not presenting this to you saying here's the same thing that you've loved all these years and we're giving it back to you again with a fresh coat of paint. It's here's something that we created based on something that you love, and it will be a different experience, but we hope that you will enjoy the work and effort that we put into this to make something
Mm-hmm.
similar, even though we know and you know that it is impossible to get that same experience from this thing. I would say, yeah, all right, this is because of the effort that you put into this. I want to try this out and I want to try this new experience to see how good it is on its own merits without judging it too harshly based on my rose tinted glasses from the past.
Sometimes that's really hard. And I kind of, just from hearing you talk about Morrowind in these topics here, I get the same feeling that I have about the Pokemon Diamond and Pearl remakes or remasters, whatever you want to call it, Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl. When those games came out and when I played them, I thought these are great games for people who have not already experienced Diamond, Pearl, Platinum. For those of the majority of the Pokemon audience who weren't fans or weren't even alive when those games came out, and that is their first experience of the Sinnoh region. But for people who did experience the prior games, they're just not the optimal experience with that region.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to not get too into my personal opinionated comparison of that, but it's kind of like, uh, at least for me, the original Generation 4 is my favorite generation because whenever I played it, it felt like I was, for lack of a better term, home in those games. Like growing up from Generation 1 and into Generation 4, I felt like this is optimized, the optimized Pokemon experience for what I wanted to have. It's got a lot of story. All the different creatures are different and interesting. All the old creatures, like, for example, not going to bash on anybody's favorites here intentionally, uh, Tangela and Magmar, they were pretty cool Pokemon for what they were, but no one wanted to use them very competitively because there were other Pokemon that were better. And Generation 4 says, here's those old Pokemon now with an extra evolution to try to hopefully make up for some of where they would be lacking today.
Mm-hmm.
So it felt like they were, in addition to moving Pokemon along, they were, uh, I'd say that they were trying to appeal to and retain some of their original designs so that as power creep comes in, all these old Pokemon that they love wouldn't just be thrown out because here's all the new better stuff, which again is probably something we could say about the card game, but I digress. And
Not
then
to stick on Pokemon too much on the Morrowind episode of Thorough Thoughts here, but it's one of those things, I think, where as you introduce new Pokemon, new gameplay elements, there is a desire to give more also to fans of the previous entries in the form of new evolutions of older Pokemon, or in the case of later games where new mechanics are being introduced, there's focus on the older Pokemon getting to utilize those mechanics, such as Mega Evolution, Gigantamax. For anyone listening to specifically wanting to hear about Morrowind and they have no idea what Pokemon is, skip ahead 10 seconds. I promise it's okay. There's an element of wanting to appease to the original fan base. So I understand what you're referring to there. Getting back to Morrowind, see, I told you 10 seconds. Prior to our interview here, you indicated to me that there a couple problems you have with Morrowind are general unplayability compared to modern gameplay standards and quality of life. Can you speak to this a little bit more, and has the game really not aged well?
there are some elements that I feel could be improved with just a little bit of tweaking. I'm very divided on my opinion about how the magic system works, where you just can't get into it without getting extra training and leveling up your skills and all that kind of stuff, because it feels very much like the game is gatekeeping you from using a very powerful system. And a lot of people are going to be trying it out and getting frustrated for far too long that they can't make it work when they're trying their best, and they'll either stop playing the game or try to play it in a different way. And I feel like if you understand the magic system as it was intended to be, then you might be willing to put more effort into it. But that's like saying about a movie that somebody doesn't like, oh yeah, the first hour and a half that was awful, but the last half hour, that's amazing. You should definitely watch the rest of the movie just for the ending. That's not fair. That it doesn't entirely excuse the experience of what came before. And as much as I like what I described earlier with the magic skills and getting better at what you are and how it is a role play system, that is great. But also, as a game, it's very frustrating and can prevent people from experiencing this particular section of the game, playing the game in this way, because it's just not built for essentially the modern consumer experience. Uh, for Skyrim and Oblivion, this is, some people are going to think I'm hating on them by describing it this way. I promise I'm not. They're very much more for the casual gamer, where you can jump in, whether you are playing the series for the first time, whether you're coming to this game for the first time, or if you've left the game alone for 10 years and you're getting back into it, you can jump into it at any time and be just as good as anybody else at that point. With that though, I mean, that is great, and I love that they have been more considerate in how they've created games that way. But also I like that Morrowind is saying, you want to get good at this very powerful system, put in the effort. So I don't know if I would want the magic system to be adjusted, or I don't even know if this is the right word to use, improved, to allow people to understand and get into it better. But that's definitely one of the biggest problems that I think a lot of people have with Morrowind, is just the magic system, as well as the fact that if you play later games, your magic will recover on its own. Whereas in Morrowind, if you want to recover your magic, you either drink a potion or you go to sleep until your magic is recovered. And that can take, it won't be just 1 hour of taking a nap. You have to sleep until your magic is fully recovered.
Mm-hmm.
So that's definitely a big problem. Another one that I know a lot of people have that people struggle with in the game is the quest system. in Morrowind, and I think this is genius for what Morrowind was at the time, but it is very dated. The quest system in Morrowind is that you have a button to open a journal, and in the journal you have the the date that you received a particular quest update and details about what that quest update was. But the quests do not have a name. There is no way to sort by quests. If you want to find a previous entry, you have to flip back through your journal. And in later hours of the gameplay, you might have 250 pages of the journal, and you're getting back to a quest that you started way at the beginning of the game that you forgot completely about. You want to go all the way back to page 3 to try to find that quest entry that may or may not be there and you may or may not recognize? Not really. That's annoying. But for Morrowind being, again, a role-playing game, having it as a journal where you are writing down these little notes that your character wants to keep track of, and there's no tabs that you can automatically put in, that's really clever. It's great. But another problem that comes off with that is there are a couple of quests where characters will give you very particular directions to get to a location, and those directions are wrong. And you're going in the completely wrong direction to try to find this cave named Milk. It's an actual cave, I swear. And you're looking in the wrong spot, and you have no idea where this thing is. Did you pass it already? Are you just not there yet? Is it farther away than you thought? No, it's on the other side of the freaking map because they gave you bad directions. So I feel like a big, big improvement that would be a great quality of life improvement to the game is to have the compass that they have in later games, or even better. I think even better. I just now thought of this. In Oblivion Remastered, at least, they have the clairvoyant spell, which you can use, and it will show you a path to get to where you want to go. Whereas in both Oblivion and Skyrim, normally you have the compass that has a quest mark that says, as the bird flies, here's where you want to get to, and then you end up jumping up a mountain because the mountain is in the way between you and the quest objective, when you could have saved 10 minutes by just walking around the mountain. So maybe like if they added a clairvoyant spell into a Morrowind update, that would be great. If they did add a compass feature, I would probably say to give the option to have the player toggle it on or off, just kind of like with the clairvoyant spell, because I kind of feel like between having spoken directions to you written in a journal, and then there's the clairvoyant spell that shows you the path, and then there's the compass, those are all different ways to track the experience that you want to have. So maybe you don't want to have the compass marker up. Maybe you don't want to have the clairvoyant spell. Don't use the clairvoyant spell. It's as simple as that. Yeah, you have the option, but that doesn't mean you have to use it. The clairvoyance line that you follow to get from quest point to quest point doesn't just stay on all the time. So while you're trying to walk around and do stuff, you've got this glowing line trying to lead you out of the town saying, hey, here's where you want to go, get on it. But you want to explore and talk to these people and check out these different buildings and see what all else there is.
I feel like have the option. A great way to implement a toggleable compass would be to introduce a literal compass item into the game. Similar how you equip a torch and you hold it up. You equip your compass and you hold it up and you look at it.
I could see that working really, really well with the role-playing aspect overall. That would, because having that heads-up display, even, it takes you out of the game experience and has you playing the game. So having the physical compass, that would be really cool.
All right, so Todd, we know you're listening. More accessible magic, more easily accessible magic, I should say. Quest log organization. Add a physical compass item to the game. Add a clairvoyant spell, and create less unreliable quest givers. That's all we need.
I think it would be. I do also like, even if they're giving you wrong directions sometimes I like that the quest givers will give you like actual directions to walk from here to there. When you get to this town, head north. When you get to this fork in the road, go west. So they add those extra dialogue into Morrowind that doesn't need to be in there, But if you don't have like a compass or a quest marker or any of that kind of stuff, it's really helpful to get from one place to another. Just a couple of them are incorrect.
I guess another way that you could make it work is you're following the directions that the NPC gave you. You get to the spot where their directions should have brought you, and then your quest log updates to be like, I went to where they told me to go and it wasn't here. I should go let them know and ask them if they know where the correct location is. A
Yeah,
seasoned player could like understand, oh, I already know they gave me the wrong direction, I can go wherever. But a first time player, especially someone looking for a realism aspect, could go back and be like, hey, you gave me the wrong directions, it wasn't over there. I think that would work too.
yeah, that would be really funny. It would probably be frustrating as well because in Morrowind there's no from uh, HUD management inventory screen from the map. There's no fast travel system either. So that would be in Morrowind. That would be frustrating. In some of the later games, not that bad. You just have to sit through however long the loading screen is.
So we talked the main quest at the top of our discussion today, but these games are notoriously known for keeping the player busy with side quests. What are some of your favorite Morrowind side quests?
Whew, I pulled up some of my favorites. I don't know if there's like a particular quest where I would say this quest in particular, you have to experience it. It's just that good. But all the quests are like they are. I will say that the side quests are not. They don't feel like side quests. They kind of feel like a hey, if you have time, could you help me with this? If not, okay, you can come back and ask later. When you are in the side quest and doing the side quest, you feel like this is an important event for this person that I am helping. And that feeling comes across in many of the side quests that you do through the game. So it's hard to pinpoint exactly what the right quest is that really stands out the most, but there are some experiences that I have that I took note of. There's a there's a smuggler's den where somebody says, "Hey, can you bring this person to this other location for me? I'll pay you this much now, and you can get paid this much when you get there." They're like, "Okay, sure." And as you're approaching that location, the person that you're escorting says, "Hey, just so you know, the reason that this escort is happening is they had me swallow a bag of drugs. And when you bring me to where they told you to take me, they're going to kill me so they can cut me open and get and take the drugs out of my belly. This is a smuggling racket that you're a part of."
Oh, dang.
And that is, you are in the middle of the quest, just doing somebody a quick little favor. Suddenly there's a punch to your gut. What the heck is going on here? These are messed up people doing messed up things in this world that I love. Just where did this come from? But that one in particular is very
It
real.
stands
Sure,
out.
I'm eloquent. Yeah, yeah. It's an experience that you remember when you come across it the first time.
You gotta
Another
love
one,
those moral quandaries that just pop up out of nowhere.
yeah. First it was a favor. Now it's a definitive good and evil theme. What are you gonna do about this?
And
And the
part of
person
that
that
is
you have to help.
also like, do I believe this person? Are they just trying to get out of a situation here? Do I trust the person who paid me because they've paid me?
Yeah, yeah. And if you get to the end and you want to do what you feel is the right thing and kill that person who's going to cut her open, they are much more well armed than you because this is a professional smuggling operation. This is not some random dude with a knife in a shack waiting to get his drop. This is somebody who kills for money. Another quest that comes across really well in the role playing aspect is you talk to Fort Commander and he says, "Hey, so if you're not busy, can I tell you a little story?" And he like goes in the story about this person wants to do good things, but these people don't want him to do the good things, and he can't get rid of those people because of his position. But if somebody really nice comes along and gets rid of those people, it would make that good person really, really happy. Whereas in later games, somebody would say, "Hey, these people are doing these things and they're causing me these problems. Can you go get rid of them because I can't do it myself?" But in the role playing aspect, it's let me try to tell you what needs to be done in a way that can get it done without either of us being in great legal trouble from me telling you more blatantly. It's like, oh yeah, I get what you're putting down. So
Like,
that's kind of
I didn't tell you I needed help. I told you a story.
Yes. There's one very small side quest that is really easy to miss. A little ways out of a city, you can find this orc NPC who is just hiding behind a rock. And if you talk to him in very broken English, he'll ask you to take this note to somebody that's in the town. And they'll say, oh, yeah, that person's really stupid. Here, take this note back to him. And if you read the notes, they're in equally broken English. And you're like, these people are idiots trying to communicate in ways that I can very clearly see on the notes. You're like, fine, I'll just do this, get this little chore out of the way. And when you're all done, you go back to the first guy, you give him the note, and he says, thank you for this. I give you a reward. Here is shiny rock. Stupid person. And that shiny rock that he gave you was a diamond. he doesn't recognize the value.
Gotta love that.
Very famously, there's an NPC that that you can talk to and have an unofficial romance with as well. You just kind of talk to them and you'll talk about different topics, and they say, I'd like to see these flowers. So you go out and bring them the flowers and like, oh, that's so cool. Let me tell you a little secret. And they'll tell you about this person in this particular location that has this very unique item. And you go get that and you bring it back to her and she says, I'm glad that you got that item. I'm glad that you have that. If we can do this back and forth exchange, she'll tell you stuff that she wants and she'll tell you stuff that you might want to go find. Usually the stuff that she says she wants, she said, you either give it to her or she says, no, you can keep that. I'm just glad that you were able to find it and show it to me. And then it doesn't really progress into like a whole love story, but you can tell, like, based on how the character is talking with you, that there is an implied romantic connection there. And it's probably, it might be a little opinionated about whether people like it or not, because the character is a Kaji and people are going to go, right! But still, like, it is an NPC that you talk with and you have this more forged connection with than you do with any of these other quest givers, because they are trying to communicate to you like a person instead of this person who came in that I am obligated to interact with because they have these particular connections or whatever. So that's kind of a fun one as well. The last one that I have is one that I did for the first time, I believe, when I was doing my YouTube series. And I was not aware of how this turned out. There's a quest where you go into the inn and there's this guy who is just super upset that there's this haunting that is happening in his inn. One of the rooms has a ghost in it. Somebody comes in to kill the ghost and the ghost is back the next day. You're just frequently causing problems. So he wants you to figure out the problem. Down the line, you realize this person is summoning this ghost every day to harass the innkeeper and his patrons because the innkeeper got really annoying about trying to go through all the red tape to inconvenience this person and just wasn't being very cooperative with them. So they say, all right, I will stop the hauntings, and in addition to that, I will give you these official ghost-free papers that you can take to the innkeeper, and it will prove that everything is fine now. He doesn't have to worry. And I have this pulled up because I would like to read it word for word. The ghost-free papers, certification of ghost-free hospitality, by authority of the super extra very sovereign council of mages without digits within bowels. Hereas the Gateway Inn and all its dark and secret places have been found to be completely free of spooks, boojums, snarks, spectral goats, revenant toiletries, or cannibal vampire anchovies. Masurao Mistress Dunmer, from faraway Mage Lady, Lord High Inspector of Holstery for the town of Sadith Mora aforesaid, does pronounce the Gateway Inn free and clean of all otherworldly, hostile, and malign entities, with the exception of the profound and displeasing odor that arises from the Prefect of Hospitality, which, despite the preternatural magnitude of its offenses, may well derive from altogether more mundane sources.
Well, I mean, if I got that and I had a ghost problem, I would say, well, this is proof.
Yeah, he was he was flustered and upset by that, but I just found it really funny that this person says, "Sure, here's some official papers that you can show them off to whoever you want."
I mean, my favorite part of this is the fact that it was a situation born out of like petty revenge. They had a problem with the innkeeper over something, and they're like, you know what? I'm gonna pester them by summoning a ghost every day.
Social spite. That's the entire reason for this haunting to be happening in the first place. But those are some of the most standout moments that I can think of, aside from different things that happen during the guild quest lines, which are probably fairly extensive, and I will be respectful of your time to not get into too much.
You know, if we ever do a Morrowind Part 2, we can go into like the guild quest lines. That would be perfectly fine with me.
Alrighty then.
Moving forward in time once again, Skyrim's anniversary update introduced a lot of creative content. Not necessarily created by Bethesda, but kind of given a honorary canonical badge almost, that introduced a set of quests that revolve around Morrowind and its characters. Did you experience these quests? And if so, how good of a job did the quest do as an ode to the third game in this franchise?
I have not played the Skyrim Anniversary Edition, and I haven't seen a whole lot of content from it aside from fishing. Though I recently saw the Ghost of the Tribunal quest, which I think will probably be the most likely love letter in that they added. Though again, I don't know for sure.
That's the one. Yep.
Okay, cool. I saw all the content for it and the different quests that you take as part of that larger quest, and it's very much it's a very, very good tribute to Morrowind. It feels like if Bethesda wanted to say, we recognize that a lot of you people go back to Morrowind and you still say Morrowind is great and you want people to try it, and a lot of people might be turning it down. So for you people specifically, here's a quest where you can collect very specific items that we know that you will have a very nostalgic and potentially emotional effect on you when you see that we have put them in the game. A few of them are items that you do not get in the game because they are not items that you can collect. Just the mask that certain NPCs will wear. That isn't even an item. It's just part of their character design. And I feel like that's really, really special. There are a couple of the weapons that you can get that when you get them in Morrowind, you're going, this is the coolest thing I have ever seen. When you get them in Skyrim, you could probably get that same feeling of, this is amazing. I'm glad that these look so great. And if you're familiar with Morrowind, you go, oh my gosh, they brought these back. I feel so warm from all of this.
My experience, because I've never played Morrowind before, quite obviously, when I went through the Ghost of the Tribunal questline, I had no idea what all of the different items and references were specifically. I could recognize, like, oh, this is probably related to these kind of things in that game. But for me, it was really like, okay, I have this enemy here, and then you have this book and this note telling you what's going on. You find their hideout, and you can either pretend to be one of their allies to sneak in, and I think you can also possibly join them, or you just kill everyone and you can take all of the stuff. And I opted for the latter, being well, clearly, this is an underground operation because no one wants these 3 characters in power anymore. So let me do my civic duty and do murder hoboing, which I did. And then I went through and I collected all of the items. I'm like, oh, well, that's interesting. Anyway, into the treasure chest forever. I'm sorry to say, I literally forgot where I was going with that, but ultimately, I experienced that quest line. I'm actually in my current playthrough of Skyrim. I'm kind of saving that for me working on some other skills because it's an area with a lot of enemies that you can level up attack spells with or attack skills with. Another thing that I just remembered, there is a hilarious mod online. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, and you, dear listener, if you haven't heard of this, I highly suggest checking it out, just because it's so funny. Have you heard of or seen any videos on the Dagoth Follower mod for Skyrim?
This is the first time I've heard of it, and I can imagine what the dialogue would be like.
I'm going to read a quote here from someone who, on the Reddit thread about the Dagoth follower experience, I'm going to not include the slur, but one of the quotes that Dagoth says as you're playing the game says, "Oh, great, just what we needed, bigger effing Argonians." I'm guessing that's in regard to fighting a dragon.
Probably, yeah. Although the Argonian model is pretty different than how it was in Morrowind too, so it could also be a reference to that.
So I highly recommend looking up the video of it, listening to the voice actor and all of the lines. It's a very enjoyable and hilarious experience. And that's coming from me, who doesn't know all of the references. It's just, here's this character who's being very provocative and uncensored, I should say.
They got Ur's quotes during the game, during Morrowind's main quest, are very recognizable and quotable. They have been extremely memed to the point where I think it's been overdone personally. But yeah, it's one of the Dagoth has one of the few spoken dialogues in the game that isn't just passing NPC chatter, and very it's very well done. It's very eloquent. It kind of feels like somebody you would meet in the high class section of the biggest city. This guy's just very regal in how he speaks, but also he's very full of himself. It's just Dagoth has one of the most recognizable voices from Morrowind.
Is he like a character who is either like a king or someone of that like noble stature where they can just be as crazy and limitless with how they talk because no one would do anything about anything they say?
Not I can't get too specific because it would spoil some of Morrowind's story, but essentially, yeah, he is that kind of egotistical, very strong individual. But unlike a lot of other villains, he's not just ego. He has that ego because of how powerful he is. And he's not saying, I am this powerful and no one can stand against me. He is that powerful and no one can stand against him. It's a power that he knows that he has and everybody else knows that he has. And he's not being egotistical about it. It's just, it feels more like honest recognition of this is where my power level is. I'm not being humble. I'm not being a braggart about it. This is where I actually am.
Just, I'm being factual right now.
Yeah.
It gives me a lot of Neloth vibes from the Dragonborn DLC in Skyrim.
Neloth was.
He's
I can throw this out real.
He's the Telvanni wizard who lives in the mushroom house, and he's very much like, once our family is returned to power, I'll have all of the respect my name deserves, but until then, I'm still a very powerful wizard, and I will just kill you if you bother me too much.
Yeah, Neloth was actually a NPC in Morrowind as well.
Oh, really?
You interact with. Yeah, Dark Elves live a long time.
It's one of those things I always forget about with regards to the lore that you can come across characters from some of the older games, despite those games taking place usually hundreds of years in between, and it's not just a nod to the character, it's the character.
Yeah, there are even some locations in Solstheim that were in Skyrim that were locations in Solstheim and Morrowind for the
Oh,
DLC.
cool.
And I love that so much. Going back to Solstheim was just modern nostalgia for me when that happened. That Neloth was part of the Telvanni quest line in Morrowind, and there are three great houses in Morrowind: Hortator, Redoran, and Telvanni. If you join one, you can't join the other two. And near the end of the quest line, you are going to kill some people related to those areas as well. So you pick one and you're locked out of the others. And if you want to do the other ones, you better play a new game because you ain't going to experience them otherwise. But Neloth, back in Morrowind, he did kind of have that I am powerful and you need to know I'm powerful and don't be a problem or we are going to have problems once and then I'm going to be the only one left. But he's also the guy in the Telvanni who's like, I'm going to support you as you try to make progress throughout this, throughout the Great House and try to make your name known, get a reputation, and help you get built up to the point that you will plateau. So finding him in Skyrim, his change in demeanor definitely makes sense because in Skyrim, the mountain erupted, it destroyed all the living space that anyone could have lived through in Morrowind, and he had to move to Solstheim or the mainland, and he went to Solstheim, and he's upset because in addition to the entirety of the island now being inhospitable, he lost everything that he had that gave him a status, that gave him a sense of purpose, that people would recognize him. And now he's living with people that go, oh, he's just a strong, crazy wizard who moved out here who has an inflated ego of himself. Just ignore him and we'll all be fine. Like, of course, his temperament's going to change because this is not what he used to have. This is a huge downgrade, and people are kind of socially belittling him. And it makes sense that he would have this much change. But yeah, Neloth is just, he's a great choice to have in the Skyrim DLC.
I recall Neloth has this line at the end of all of his individual quest lines from the DLC, where you've helped him out, you've taken out an enemy of his, and you've restored like some balance to his house a little bit, like the literal house, not the house Telvanni. But part of the reward of that is he says, I'll make you an honorary member of House Telvanni. And you get the option of asking him, what does that entail? Like, what are the perks of that? And he goes, well, right now, nothing much. You get a bed and a chest in my house. But in a few hundred years, when the House Telvanni is restored back to power, then you'll be a god among men.
Yeah, and for Dark Elves who have that particular status in the Great Houses across the whole government system that Morrowind had, that is definitely a very high status that he's offering, and he probably couldn't offer more than that. Like, he could give you the greatest weapon, the greatest armor in Elder Scrolls history, and it would not be as meaningful for him to give to you as making you an honorary member of the Great House. That's not just a quick little thing like, oh, maybe he won't survive this long and we can get away with giving this to him. Haha. No, it's like, this is an honor that I am giving you, and it's very difficult for you to recognize how strong this is, but it is something very meaningful to me, and it's the greatest way that I am able to recognize how much you've done for me.
I guess it's one of those things that without the context, really, like if you as a player are not either aware of the significance of the houses of Morrowind or paying attention to the detail that they do provide in the game through books or notes or the extra conversations that are potentially missable with characters, you don't get that significance. You hear not important now. You get a bed and a chest, and really, like, for a casual player especially, that's it. So it's kind of
Yeah.
nice to learn that it's really, it really is a high honor that Neloth is giving that. That's not just oh, there's that silly Neloth again. It's literally this will mean something, and when it does, this is the highest honor I could possibly give you.
Yeah, even if you're not alive to see it, your name will be memorialized forever. But stepping back from that, with all that context in mind, that's kind of how the Elder Scrolls games are as a whole. You can have your casual experience, you can have your committed experience, and you can have your across games experience. And then if you just love the series so much that you want to do a deep dive into the lore, which I've tried and it's not for me as much as I would love for it to be, the
It's
game,
tough.
the lore of the series as a whole and the world is so incredibly well thought out that it is ridiculous to think about why would they even bother making some of these stuff. It makes no sense to need to put this stuff in, but they did it anyway, and with that context you understand certain events and characters, maybe even characters that you don't see because they are ancient history. But this series has that much detail put into it, and if you don't want to, if you never come across it, that's fine. It's your experience, but it's there if you want it. It never has to be part of your experience. We will never try to force it down your throat. We will never try to make you aware that it is available, but it is available. And if you are curious and you want to look for this stuff on your own, you are going to find more than you expected, which will either be overwhelming, interesting, or an obsessive treat for you. But this world is not just a world that exists in a game that we release every now and then. This is a world with history, ancient history, beyond ancient history, recent history, forgotten history, all these different events and things out of belief that who knows how far you could go in this series if you just wanted to do a deep dive.
There really should be, like, proper high school or college level courses about the lore of this game. You could spend infinite amount of time diving deep into any aspect of the lore of the Elder Scrolls universe. It really is fascinating to me. I try to go into very specific topics every now and then because I'll see something on the Elder Scrolls Reddit that sounds interesting, and I'm like, oh well, I want to know more about that. And you click on the link to the wiki, and it's not only just like essentially a several page document of scrolling information, but it's also like you see the huge reference list at the bottom, and it's like, okay, well, if I want to learn this, I'll have to learn about these other events that happened because all of them directly relate to what you're trying to learn about, and you're going to see at least 16 different names that don't mean anything to you that you'll have to at least understand why they're there. To be specific, one of the things that I last really had a deep dive into in regards to Elder Scrolls lore is I believe his name is just Magus, the wizard in like ancient history of Elder Scrolls who created the sun by breaking a hole through the shell that surrounds space and the planets, and the light that shines through is actual magic, and that has how the sun exists. If you know, if you can just say yes, that's it, or no, that's not it, feel free to just say that.
Yeah, I haven't even heard about that stuff because that is some deep lore that goes beyond what I've ever been able to read about.
All right, so anyone listening, please feel free to correct me, but that's my understanding of it, and that's such a, even if I am correct, it's correct but, or correct with an asterisk, because I'm recalling information that as I'm saying it is like such a small piece of it. Even if it's true, there's so much more to it than just he blasted a hole through the space-time. It was like him ascending or him like escaping reality or something. Again, we're getting outside of that, but it was like him bursting through is the sun, and all of his followers bursting through are the stars. And all of that light that shines through is how magic gets introduced to the world, to Mundus. Again, in the comments, please. Am I right? Yes or no, or asterisk, yes but, no but. We have, very unfortunately, Akuma, gone a little bit over time, so I'm going to have to skip what was probably the question you may have been looking forward to the most, so I hope we can do a Morrowind Part 2 to get to this. I'll say what the question is, just to tease it for the next episode. The question would have been, what is a question you've wanted someone to ask you about regarding Morrowind? And, honestly, that might be an entire episode in and of itself. But to wrap up this interview, I'd just like to talk about the future of Elder Scrolls. It was announced several years ago, Elder Scrolls 6, even though there's no official release date. When do you think it might come out, and what do you think we should expect from Elder Scrolls 6?
I feel like they announced it way too early. I feel like they announced it just to say, hey, we know that you want it, we're working on it, don't worry. So I don't really know if I would call that an announcement. It'd just be, shut up, quit asking us about it.
It was an acknowledgement.
Yeah. I'd say minimum, unless they're planning to do a surprise release, I'd say maybe a minimum 8 years from now. Because,
wow,
like we've gone over with all the lore and everything that goes into each bit of these games, like just looking up the history and the power of Alduin the World Eater from Skyrim, it's a lot. So that was just one character that they made for one game that just came out very recently. So what's going to happen in Elder Scrolls 6? I don't know, but they're going to have to create a lot of lore and a lot of world and a lot of whole new things that we can't even begin to fathom where these ideas even come from or why they needed them in the first place for Elder Scrolls 6. So the fact that they probably just released that teaser, I don't think they had anything. I know that there's been a bunch of rumors and whatnot, but I kind of would believe that they didn't have anything. They were just acknowledging that they were going to work on it. But at this point, we've gotten Starfield, we've gotten a few Fallout games. Elder Scrolls is just kind of at this point where it'll be done when it's done, whether it ends up being a passion project like Morrowind was on one side of the scale, or a casual gamer cash grab like maybe Skyrim feels to a lot of the Morrowind diehards. Not me, I like Skyrim. Who could say what direction they're planning to go with this, how in-depth they're going to make it, both as a game, as an experience, as the world, however deep they want to go. It can go a whole lot of different directions. So depending on how much they put into this, I could very easily and honestly believe we could wait 8 years for it. And if I'm wrong, great. And if it takes even longer than that, oh no.
And you're talking about 8 years from right now, correct? 2025.
Yeah, I could believe that. And just as long as whenever it comes out, when it eventually does come out, all I want for the game, all I want is for them to be able to release it, look at it, and for every person on the team to say, I am proud of what I've made, and I have done the best that I could with the skills, resources, and everything else available to me. This is the best thing that I could have made today for this game. And I hope that people will love it as much as we do, if not more, when they buy it.
That is such a huge ask. That is so selfish of you. How dare you? No, I'm kidding. The biggest rumor, or maybe I should say the most recent rumor I've heard, and I am not speaking as anyone who has any type of source even remotely close to reliable. It was a Reddit comment I saw when I last looked into this X amount of days ago. The last rumor I saw was a thought of the game coming out June 26th of next year. so that they could have a 6/26/26, similar to how they had an 11/11/11 release date for Skyrim. Because leave it to Bethesda to like numbers that look good and kind of like a I'm forgetting the word for when there's multiple words with the same letter, alliteration, like a numeric alliteration. And honestly, just from that alone, I'm thinking it could be possible. It's been several years since they even acknowledged that they were working on it. But then again, who knows how long they've been working on the Oblivion remaster? Maybe that's taken time and resources away. So between June 26, 2026 and 8 years from now is a pretty decent window. I feel like we will get a release in that time frame.
I mean, they talked about it before the events of 2020 happened, and it's 2025 now, so who could say when it's actually going to come out? Rumors are rumors, speculation is speculation. Some people know what they're talking about, some don't, and some want others to think that they know what they're talking about. At this point, I just want them to be proud of the final product. That's all I want, because that's what Morrowind felt like to me.
In terms of gameplay and story, I think I would want them to go backwards in time. Whether that means the events of the game take place during the same time frame as some other events in other games, or shortly before or maybe shortly after. With Oblivion to Skyrim, it's, I think, 200 years has passed. So there's lots of time in that just time period alone that a story could take place in. There is so much time before the events of Oblivion that events of any storyline can take care of. I think pushing the timeline further forward, while it would allow them to create basically anything they want, because they're creating any amount of time to have events to be referenced to, I think it would be of benefit to the fan base, or especially like the diehard fan base of looking for extra lore information and confirmation of certain things, while also keeping things getting too advanced. Because I think a selling point and a high interest point of the Elder Scrolls games is that it's stuck in your medieval fantasy era of doing things. The further forward in time you go, the less understanding I think people will get for, like, what do you mean they don't have muskets yet? You know, they've been working with bow and arrow, and they work with crossbows and whatnot. You think they haven't invented gunpowder yet after all this time? That kind of stuff.
I could probably go into a tangent about why and how that wouldn't exist, but for the sake of time, I'll respectfully decline to elaborate on my thoughts for that.
I will write it down for a topic for Morrowind Part 2.
And that it will also be very off topic if I go into that as well, but yeah,
I'm literally just writing down topic muskets ? Gunpowder ? Future EpitaphFox will know what that means. Well,
based on the events, I can throw this out really quick based on all the stuff that you said. I do think that maybe going back to a previous era would be best for Elder Scrolls 6, because a lot of what happened in Skyrim is going to really shake up the canonical history of what's going to happen in games set in the future moving forward, to the point where I don't know if it's possible to set any games after that timeline unless they do a timeline split, because there are some radical shakeups to the world and the existence of the world inside everything as a whole that are just completely things that you can't go back from. So it would be easier to create, and also easier on the developers to just say, let's step back, let's go to an era where we can a little bit more safely do whatever we want without breaking everything, because we already know what comes after this.
So I wasn't going to mention this, but part of my want to go back in time rather than further forward, purely selfishly, and because I think it would be funny, would be so that Bethesda and Todd and the whole like writing team, they don't have to answer what is the canonical outcome of the Civil War.
Yes.
Because I feel like if you go far enough forward in time, you could very easily say, yeah, that civil war that happened hundreds of years ago, it's so crazy, but this is the system we have now, completely skipping over, well, what was the immediate result of that, because it doesn't matter. This is the system that's present. But if you go backwards in time, you don't even have to do any of that, because it never happened yet.
You even see like some things that were erased from history that had huge impacts that nobody wrote down because nobody wanted to talk about them, and just they're forgotten parts of history.
Lost history stuff is so interesting to me. We're gonna like talk for another like 40 minutes if we keep going down this. Akuma, thank you so much for spending some time talking Morrowind with me. I've really enjoyed learning all of the information that you shared with me today. I can't wait for us to get to Morrowind Part 2 whenever that will be. But that is going to be it for us for today. Thank you all so much for listening. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. Take care and goodbye.
Bye.